Okay, people should be seeing a OCP Tech Week.
We see your other screen actually right now.
Wonderful. That's just terrific. Let me try again. New share. Okay, is that the OCP Tech Week?
Yep,
Yeah.
we can see it, Ron.
Let me see. Good. All right. Here we are with our vendor panel. So this is a good panel. And we basically want to talk again about how things are going. We have we have this timeline which we came up with a few years ago, and we basically have a few questions. We're going to try and stay on time, so I might have to be rude and cut people off, and I'm sorry in advance. But we have a lot of people, and we want to make sure everyone gets heard. So it's just going to be round robin. Jeff, I'm really sorry. It turned out your slide you sent me wouldn't go in because it was a PPTX and this is a Google Doc. So no matter what I did, Google Docs didn't want to deal with it. So it actually did deal with a different deck, but it turned out that was the wrong deck. So we'll just round robin on the questions. And the first question is, and I'll just start with obviously the order of people in this talk. As a silicon vendor, platform vendor, or independent BIOS vendor, do your company's products meet the open system firmware requirements today? And basically how and what is missing. So we'll just start with the order will be Mohan, Dong, Jeff, Philip, and Zachary, if that's okay. And I'm going to hand it off to Intel. And I guess you'll have to tell me when to hit the down arrow, Mohan.
Ron, go ahead and build it up.
Okay.
Just to save time.
I'd say try and shoot for like 3 minutes, and
yeah.
we'll try and get done in time. All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Hello everyone. This is Mohan Kumar. I'm an Intel fellow, and I lead cloud architecture in Intel's data center group. And in that context, for me and for our team, OCP is very important because cloud is not just about hardware, it's about solutions. So we're not just looking for a platform, but all the ingredients that build on top of it, like platform security, firmware management, a view that's beyond just single server or single storage node, and even a view into the data center. We feel that OCP, that if I take the cloud solution stack and put the OCP projects on top, it's a perfect 1:1 match, which is very heartening to see. And especially for the two new projects, I call them new because I've been with OCP for a long time. So security project and the open system firmware projects are fairly new, and but they're in the right direction in terms of where our cloud customers would like to go. And in that sense, to answer Ron's question, absolutely, that we are on track. We are developing on the basis of FSP, which I'll go into in greater detail. And I think there are a few more questions, so as we talk about them. Our plan is to build on top of the FSP, and I will show you how when I come to my next slide.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, jeez, there's another.
No,
okay. And we've also got Ampere here today. Although I think Dong Wei is going to be talking. So go ahead. Oh, you muted?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's a common thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Dong Wei. I work at ARM. I'm responsible for the industry standards efforts. I'm an ARM fellow. So regarding to your question, basically we absolutely support the open system firmware requirements. everything we do in firmware is open source in ARM. And so we work with a lot of the projects. We actually stood up a trusted firmware project. And then we also participate in Tiano Core EDK2, U-boot, and Linux boot, basically to make sure ARM IP are well supported in all the mainline code bases out there. One thing is that ARM actually doesn't ship processors or servers directly. So our partners are actually providing the associate firmware for their hardware. And most of them are providing open source firmware solutions. So however, there are some exceptions. So for partners and customers, you would have to check with the vendors to confirm. And I'm happy to report that, for example, Ampere is committed to support open system firmware. I think this morning they already demoed the Linux boot working on the Ampere Ultra platform. And they also work with EDK2 as well and OpenBMC. So they actually have a lot of GitHub repositories for these projects already. So they also feel that it is important, for them to work with the OSF working groups and others to develop the solutions. This is just an example. We have other partners doing the very similar things. So if you're just interested, you can check out with the silicon providers or ask me as well.
Okay, thanks. All right, Jeff, I'm sorry about your slide, but I'll just leave it here if you want to talk to the question.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeff Krantz. I work at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. To answer this question, yes, absolutely, we meet these requirements today. I think the asterisk on that is that we are doing them privately. Jean-Marie earlier showed off a demo of our public build system where you can actually build Linux boot or OpenBMC and run it on a client platform. He showed that off earlier today. We've been demoing this for over a year. We were at the Open Compute Summit in Europe last fall where we demonstrated these technologies, and we've done it virtually since then. I think the key is we've solved the technology problems. We've got OpenBMC and Linux boot working. I think part of the challenge there was getting it to work with HPE's Silicon Root of Trust that is in our ILO BMC ASIC. We've got this working on our Proliant and our Apollo platforms. I think the issue is, though, we want to make sure we get it working privately with key customers who have the right level of sophistication to engage with us right now, and get it all working, flawlessly, and work through some of the challenges that we're seeing. As an OEM, I think some of the unique challenges we have are, service support and warranty with respect to code bases that are not ours. And then with anything we do with respect to customer engagement, we need to figure out how to make it scalable. So by working privately with a few customers and getting this working and enabling them to run it, we're learning from that so we can ultimately, when we're ready, when the market's ready, when more customers are ready for this, we can unveil it publicly and have a widespread offering.
Okay. Philip? You muted, or are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Or do you have any? Yeah, do you have anything for this question?
Yeah, I had slides. So did you integrate them? Just asking.
Oh, there we are. Apologies.
Thank you. I was a little bit confused. So okay.
My fault. My fault. I took it out of order.
Okay, so yeah, we meet the requirements today and since 2 years, I would say, or 4 years, because we are an open source IBV. So our main work is to support customers on having open source firmware on their platforms. We also design security architectures based on the customer ownership model, which is quite important to open system firmware. And we provide testing for open source firmware and communities, and also to our customers. And aside from that, we creating all tools we provide in open source, and same goes for documentation. And we upstream our code back. So we are one of the biggest upstreamer in the Coreboot community. And I think we also really engage with Linux boot as well. So yeah, we meet the requirements. Nothing is missing. That's it.
All right. And I think, sorry about this. This is Sriram from IT Renew. Who's from IT Renew? Anyone?
I was on mute. Yes, people can call me Shri. It's a lot easier to say. Shriram. I'm from IT Renew. So I would say that currently none of our current shipping products meet the requirements today, primarily because we're using. It should not be surprising given the nature of our business, but we're currently using the OCP Leopard V2 platform, for our Discovery and Sesame form factors. And so to actually get on the road to compliance, they're currently using a legacy FSP, which at this point we don't believe is ready for the kind of support we want to give to our customers. So to be able to bridge that back, we don't really believe that this, I mean, would take resources that would exceed more than what one company could do. And so I guess I would reach out to the OSF community that if they are willing to get OCP, the Leopard platform, into compliance, we would love to join any effort in that to do that, so that we can be in compliance for our current shipping products.
Okay. And then Zachary.
So, hi. Am I unmuted properly?
You are unmuted properly. Thank you.
So AMI does have an open product for our BMC firmware today that meets OCP requirements. We do this through an open BMC Linux Foundation-based product called OSP from AMI. The source code for it is available online at fossgit.am or fossgit.ami.com. AMI is currently working with industry partners to enable a similar solution for our UEFI-based firmware. And we will also ensure that the solution properly enables Linux boot options for our customers and the industry at large. Our solution will allow our partners to provide an open firmware for all future OCP platform submissions. So AMI today doesn't provide the complete solution, but we are moving in that route, and we're hoping to give some good announcements by end of year.
Wow. So I have to ask, because this is really interesting, Zachary. Redistribution is in that picture?
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay, this is a really big deal to me anyway. I don't know what other people think.
Obviously, there might be some binaries from some of our partners that might be on the stage or off the stage at this time, but we are headed in this direction, and we fully are embracing the open model going forward.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that, actually, for AMI as well as any other reason.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ron.
All right. Hey, what I do want to, so I'm going to be a little hard on some of our vendors here. So I would say in this round, I'd say 9 Elements gave, 9 Elements, IT Renew, and AMI, I would say gave maybe the answers that gave, I guess, the most information about our questions here, which is where are we going to be with OSF? So just wanted to mention that because I have a feeling people are going to be wanting to know more. And now we are at the, do you plan to meet the deadline? This is the next hard question. And what solutions will you use? So here we are at Intel again. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. I'll take this opportunity to also give you a more detailed answer to the previous question. So of course, you guys know that EDK2 Tiana core is something that is open source and available already, and we've been actively participating on the core boot with a few of the vendors here on the call. And of course, everyone knows our commitment to OpenBMC and how much work Intel put in. We have almost close to 100 engineers that work on OpenBMC related projects at Intel. So we are committed to to the principles of the open system firmware. And then now for the question of where, are we able to hit the deadlines? This is where I wanted to wait till I get to this slide. So our traditional model has been a monolithic bias, and we understand our customers, going forward want a more democratized and more horizontal model, if you will. And so we are going to build that. The foundation for Intel building that is going to be FSP, which is the firmware support package, on top of which we allow not just multiple bootloaders, but also multiple platform layers like core boot and slim boot and so on to exist. And it's our goal to work with OSF to comply with that. And some of these elements for the current processor that's shipping, we should be ready to have it available by March of 21.
Okay. Good. And so this is sort of the second part of the question. So March of 21, and what machine will that be?
That would be on a Cooper Lake platform.
Cooper Lake.
Yeah.
That's very, very nice. So the one thing I ought to mention, I think it is really pretty terrific, the support for OpenBMC that I'm hearing here. I do want to say that OpenBMC is not really, it seems strange, but not really OSF, because OSF is about the host CPU. Now I'm going to mix the order up a little bit. I'm sorry, but this is the order of the slides in the deck, and I don't want to mix everything up again. But I do believe that, Sri, you just said that you're just not, IT Renew won't be making a deadline, right? Is that a fairly safe statement?
Yes, that's true, but that's we also have a bit of flexibility. So if you refer you to the slide, we do have some products that we believe will be OSF compliant, especially when they're based off Tiago Pass and the Yosemite monolake. So we have a couple products like the Discovery Fast Start can actually be retrofitted with monolake, so we can get into OSF compliant using that. The FSP for that, I think, may require a little bit of work, but I think we can get there. The other one is Edge in the Box. We're actually giving a talk about that later on Thursday, which is targeted toward the edge industry, but that also can be retrofitted with monolake. So we do have some that we can provide that will be OSF compliant next year, but they do require a little engineering work to get to full compliance. But we feel that we're quite.
Again, I might have misheard, but is that something you felt the community could help you with?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Was that something that you felt that? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Like, I'm sort of getting this message like internet unstable. I don't know what that means.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah. So, but in the slide, like I said, we as long as we can like do it based on Tiago Pass and Yosemite, we should be able to be under OSF compliance. So that's kind of where we are right now.
I'm taking it as a yes because I like optimism.
All right, good.
Okay. Now I think Dongwei, I think you're going to tell me yeah, but let's go ahead.
Yes. So certainly we already have all the working open source. So I think we from ARM's point of view, we don't have any reason not able to meet the deadline. But of course, from the silicon and the platform side, we are not producing the SoCs or the servers, so people will have to check with the vendors. We also have been working with the vendors to establish a lot of standards programs to make sure that they can actually support the firmware solutions that are standardized. And in that case, we have established the system ready program. basically standardize the firmware to support either the EDK2 based solutions or the Linux boot based solutions, even though the program itself doesn't require open source, but by standardizing the interfaces, it made sure that the solutions are going to be easier to make, and so of course, the open source solutions are encouraged.
Yeah, I will say that I think that a lot of people, we've talked about it, a lot of people in the Linux boot community appreciated the Linux boot server ready initiative. It really just cleaned things up for us in a lot of ways. So that was appreciated.
Yeah, great. I very appreciate you like it, and so we're going to work on that.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go with Philip, because I know he won't make it.
Okay, so for us, we are 150% compliant with OSF. That means we are not also fulfilling the 100% by March 2021. We are already that compliant because we're using core boot, Linux boot, and Tiano Core. We are an open source IBV, so we just make use of open source firmware. So we also can redistribute all those binaries if they are licensed with a SOC vendor, but normally that's the case, and so this should work. Aside from that, why we are 150% compliant is because we convince SOC vendors to open up. So that's what we do with different vendors. We try to push out documents, for example, which are normally under NDA, and try to open them up more. This goes same for the Converge Security Suite, where we talked today about, so that we have finally open source tooling ready by hand, right? So yeah, and we using everything, core boot, Linux boot, Tiano Core, Min platform, Slim bootloader, whatever open source firmware is there, and our customer demands, that depends on the customer as well, yeah.
So quick side question, Philip, if people got in touch with you, would they be able to, suppose somebody said, I want to experiment with this technology, would you be able to point them at something that's compliant, that's a bit more than just the PC Engine's APU2?
Yeah, for sure. So for sure, if we talk about OCP machines, we have tons of them in our lab. So for example, Delta Lake, Mono Lake was one of our work. That's what we did so far. We didn't have so many hands-on OCP machines yet, but as far as I know, these are the two machines, and probably worked on some more in terms of Linux boot and so on. But yeah, this is definitely. So there are machines out there you can use from OCP with firmware from our side, or where we brought the support to core boot, for example, and Linux boot.
Okay. All right. Now, so Jeff, as I understand it, you're doing a lot of work, preparatory work, and it sounded like you said you were going to be there, but maybe not by this March. Is that the correct interpretation, or did I miss something?
I'd like to say we're 160% compliant, but I'm going to go ahead and let Philip win this one with 150.
Okay.
Yeah, you kind of heard it right. I would say we are absolutely going to be shipping production units by this deadline with enablement for open source firmware. I think what we're not going to be planning to do initially is having our own stack and compiling code for customers. We are pushing all the code needed to work on HPE products, the Perliant and our Apollo products, onto GitHub, so customers can compile their own. We are setting a foundation where we will enable open source firmware and support customers running open source firmware. And we'll have that by this deadline. And kind of to your question to Philip, if anybody wants to reach out and talk to us, we will enable them with demo units. We will engage with them. I think right now we're trying to focus on customers who have the sophistication to build, compile, and manage images themselves. And then ultimately we'll get that up as we learn from that.
So Jeff, if you have a sophisticated customer and then they get your system and then they install open source firmware using the GitHub and whatever things there are out there, right? Is that customer restricted from giving a firmware version they build to a different company that is similarly competent and wants to try it out?
We're still working through that. So right now, our goal is to support OpenBMC and Linux Boot.
Yeah.
Maybe UBMC is another thing we're looking at. But how you take a unit for a customer we've enabled and do circular economy and give that to somebody else, we're still working through the nuances of that.
So it sounds like you're about 2/3 of the way there, which is not bad, right? Seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know how you're calculating 2/3, but yeah.
Well, you've nailed the I can build it, and you've nailed the I can install it, right, for a customer. And the only thing that we don't have solved for HT is how do I redistribute it from one customer to a different customer. So you've got to do the three things. That's all I was trying to say. If that's okay.
Build it, install it, support it. You're right. How do you transfer ownership? That's a work.
That's the trick. Yeah. And part of sharing though is also company A and company B have discovered a common need for a thing. I mean, this is the Corbett's scenario, right? And they're able to share their builds to see, right, how to make it work. And it sounds to me like you're very close. That's all I'm thinking. And yep. HPE's been a good force in this whole effort. So, okay. And finally, Zachary, it's kind of be weird asking you about hardware, but it sounds like you are doing some new things in OSF. So do you see more 2021?
You're very correct, Ron, in saying that AMI probably doesn't sell anything in the marketplace ourselves today. But we are looking at providing some development kits going forward. We have something called our OSP Dev Kit, which we are in the process of working with some of our partners to see if we can make this available in the marketplace. But AMI fully plans to enable our partners to meet the March 2021 deadline. We're currently working with a few partners right now on providing an open firmware for UEFI and BMC firmware for existing OCP platforms that are actually in the marketplace. And we plan to use a similar model for our future platforms as well. AMI's main focus for our open firmware efforts will be UEFI-based firmware that utilizes EDK2 with Min platform when available. But yep. We won't discount the ability to use Slim Boot or Core Boot when a customer or partner is pushing us in that direction. But in either way, we're going to fully enable a Linux boot payload, like I mentioned before. So we're trying to hit the biggest market needs with our solutions up front. And our BMC-based firmware, as most people have, or many people's firmwares is going to be Linux Foundation's OpenBMC-based, or is.
That's really neat. Well, I got to tell you, I kind of go through the list, and we're at almost complete success here. So I think that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so the final question, and we're really nailing it on the time here, which is good. How are you supporting the OSF charter missions and objectives, and then how do you view OSF value adds to your company's business and vision? And I guess, again, I'll take this kind of roughly in the order of the slides, which at this point means Dong Wei is first.
Oh, yeah, so a bit of surprise, but that's okay. Yeah, so I look at the OSF project, mission and, the charter mission and objectives, right? So I think it's a very natural match, because the project aims to create an open system firmware stack, which we already, like I said, we already enabling the partners to do that. And we are actually, like the project is saying, we're not limiting the efforts only to the servers. We are looking into the edge and IoT space as well. So everything ARM does in firmware is open source, and like I mentioned, a number of the projects that we have been working with, Tiano Core EDK2, U-Boot, Linux Boot. This is applying to IoT edge and servers. And we also have the trusted firmware for the ARM, CPUs. So all these things are open source, and we also support the OSF mission to, lead these changes in the firmware, for open source and easily downloaded and easily built. this is completely a match to what we have in mind. But providing the open source firmware isn't really a big problem for the ARM community. Our challenge has been the insurance of the consistency of the functionalities across the ARM ecosystem, because traditionally we have been doing a lot of purpose-built, vertically integrated solutions, right? So, so our difficulty has been to support generic OSs to just reliably deploy on ARM platforms. So that's why we created the ARM System Ready certification program. And this is not only for servers, but also for edge and IoT devices for the OS and software vendors to rely upon. And we certainly encourage the solution to be open source. We actually have worked with partners to develop and contribute the solutions in open source. So here I listed Ampere. They have a server that's certified, and we also certify the true open source solutions for Raspberry Pi. And when I come up with the slide, I didn't include an additional certified system, which just happened last week. This is the NXP Layerscape-based workstation kind of systems, workable in the edge space as well. So yeah, so we have all these solutions, and by the way, the NXP solution is open source. And we're also working very closely with Google and with Ampere on making sure the Linux boot implementation is also included in this space. And the Mount Jade from Ampere is supporting Linux boot. So overall, we believe the ARM ecosystem is well set up to deliver open system firmware compliant systems.
Okay. And Mohan? Oh, another muted, unless he's gone.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm muted.
Oh, good.
So there are two parts to it, right? Of course, a lot of folks talked about Tiano Core and EDK2, and we are the founders, and we are the ones who put it out into the open and drive that forward. We're doing the same thing with the Open VMC as well. So we are committed to the cause of open firmware and the OSF charter. In terms of supporting and advancing the cause of OSF, what we are looking forward to engaging you is, of course, Ready from Intel. Is an active participant and a co-lead of OSF. So we are putting resources to support the OSF, and we also are engaged with OSF and OCP to put some teeth into the OSF's mission by essentially going towards a model where we have badging for this firmware. So the firmware has got some certification that goes along with it. And it's also driving the right firmware, the firmware that people actually want to use. I don't mean vendors, I mean the platforms, right? You need to provide this firmware on the platforms that people actually are going to take from OCP and deploy in their environment. And that's where we want to engage Ron, you, and the rest of this team and the community to drive forward. There's a few other things that we're working on with a few folks that I see on the video call that we look forward to announcing in March.
Great. Okay, Jeff.
Thanks, Ron. Hey, yeah, I think, as you know, we think the future of the OSF is great. I think we are very aligned in wanting to make sure it's successful. I personally believe, and the company believes, that this is where the market is going. The demand is going to increase. We have to all collectively, us on the call today, have products that meet that demand in the marketplace. So we want to continue to work with all the partners out there to make sure the different open source firmware variants that we're supporting have support from us, and that we contribute to the efforts to develop them, including testing different operating systems and different options and things against it. I think for us, what we're trying to do, as I mentioned, is get through this private enablement phase and get to public as people get the sophistication to handle this stuff. And to build upon
Yeah.
what I said earlier, it doesn't have to be that customers are sophisticated enough to manage it all themselves. There's absolutely a opportunity for third parties to manage, curated stacks for customers like AMI on the call today, right? So a customer could go to a third party, get the stack, put it on our system. It doesn't have to be them or us. And so we just want to enable that and give our customers and ourselves as much flexibility as possible.
Jeff, you bring up, so this is a really important point, and I'm gonna jump in here. We have felt from the beginning of this that there really was a business in this, because the thing I've noticed over the years, people want Linux, people want to know that they could, if they had to, build their own kernels. Nobody wants to do that. They all run Ubuntu or whatever, right? And so there was never really a chance that every company was going to go off and build their own firmware and run it all the time. They just wanted to know that they weren't somehow wired in or locked in, or they wanted to know they had the ability to do a modification as needed. So I think your point is really good. And that's actually one reason I'm glad AMI is here today, to hear this and to contribute, to talk about what their plans are. That's a welcome development.
I see a migration from trust us, our code is secure, to security by transparency, right? As you mentioned, people want to see code. They want to make sure the whole world is out there debugging this code and making sure exploits and vulnerabilities are fixed. So in the end, someone like AMI or even an HPE could curate their own stack and provide that. And then only the customers who need to do unique features and they want to do some value add stuff for themselves, they can go take that on and own their own stack. Yeah. And we've got, the 9 elements in Syspro here. It's been good to see all these companies here. All right, so I'll segue then into Zachary, going out of order again.
All right, we're pretty agile here. So at the same time, as an IBV, you're correct that we, up until now, have not fully embraced the OSF charter missions and objectives. So we can be upfront on that. However, we are changing internally and embracing these models. You're going to expect to see greater involvement from AMI regarding open system firmware and other projects within OCP in the next 3 to 6 months. We are transforming our business models and image, we hope, through our endeavors in these open source spaces. And we feel that the OCP model really does align with our future business strategies at the same time. As Jeff is pointing out, and you pointed out, Ron, there's a lot more people that want to tinker with their firmware. Now, some of those will be hobbyists. Some of those will be large corporations that are buying large amounts of OCP-based platforms that will need further features developed for them and these sorts of things. So we feel embracing this type of model really does enhance AMI's business going forward. It doesn't hurt it.
That's cool. I'm really happy to hear you say that. Okay, Sri?
Yeah, so I think it's clear to most of us that the circular economy is that the OSF is a critical part of our business. And in terms of what we contribute to the OSF, I will say that because we extend and support these platforms that you're supporting today, we're going to support further on, right? And so with that comes in the ability to maintain these firmware levels to past what most people would think, right? So for years to come, we're going to be able to support these firmware and so forth. So the other thing is, because we have a diversified market, that means since we're moving to like secondary and tertiary markets, we're going to be able to have we'll be able to submit bugs, we'll be able to submit test cases that we may see out in the markets there. So I think those are great things that we can do. And finally, I'm going to say that one of the things we talked about back in March was a community space to be able to do this kind of testing. Things like contests from Facebook, all that. So actually, I want to announce that in early December, we are going to have a colo that we can have a place for the community to test the OSF firmware and various other things. So that's something I wanted to talk about in terms of support. In terms of OSF's value to us, it's such a critical resource for us. We depend on the OSF heavy lifting for the engineering support to stand the test of time. So the other thing we're going to do, because we leverage OSF and have control of the firmware, we have a lot of flexibility. So that, just to give the example of the edge in a box, we're taking something that's in one form factor and moving to another factor. And there's the same thing with discovery. We have that flexibility to be able to move to different spaces because we have control over that firmware. And so we're able to take OSF in places that maybe not be originally conceived. So for us, this is such an important thing for us, and we are willing to do whatever kind of support, be able to do hardware, what people want. If they want to get into compliance, things like that, we're happy to help.
That's nice. All right. And then last but not least, of course, Philip.
Yeah. So I could read out all those stuff on the slides, how we contribute to OSF and also to the open source community. But let's say firmware is growing nowadays, right? So we have up to 256 megabytes of firmware. And so the demand to control this kind of firmware is growing. And I think this is what we are seeing from customer side as well. They want to control this part, and we're getting more and more SOCs on the PCB, and so things getting more and more complex. And I think with closed source components, this is going to be a huge hassle in the long run, especially for vendors which building their own hardware, right? So depending on how huge they are, if they are probably small, medium enterprise companies, then it's not that easy at all. And so open system firmware or open source firmware is helping them out a lot. Yeah, from our point of view, we definitely engage in the OCP community as a member. We also doing the test specification effort at the moment, or leading the test specification effort at the moment. And we also licensing core boot partner and UEFI adopters. So from that point of view, we're doing all that stuff. We're running the open source firmware conference. We're being part of all those open source firmware projects. And we're also leading the core boot and Linux boot community. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question. So yeah.
That answers the question. I wanted to thank you and all the 9 Elements people, because I know it's about 2 a.m. where you are right now, or something like that. So
we're used to it if we work together with customers in the US, right? So
yeah, but I'm still, I don't think I could do it. So, all right. I kind of wanted to leave a few minutes. Let me quick mention the call to action for people who are new to this, although I think a lot of you are already pretty familiar with this. I'm going to actually get off full screen. And did we have any questions on the chat? We have minutes, and Bill can actually weigh in. Bill, would you like to weigh in?
I would, yeah. I was catching this last panel, and I just wanted to say that one of the things that we've learned from the foundation perspective is that everybody on this panel is very key to the success of open source firmware and also the adoption of that. So, we have the folks like Ron and Philip that are really, spearheading the whole movement of open sourcing and understanding what it takes. But, at the same time, we have, folks that are, IP contributors, AMI and Intel, they're very key to this. And, I've had a lot of conversations with Zach at AMI around the role that, IPVs will play and are the necessity for us to have folks like AMI involved in this project in order to be able to scale this. We cannot reach a final vision of creating a circular economy and being able to, have this hardware being used by a second or third user and be sustainable without service providers. And during that transition, we need companies like HPE that provide services with their platforms that can help us on this journey. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody here that everybody's absolutely needed for this to work. And I think it took me a year or two to understand how this puzzle fits, but I have a very clear vision today. And every piece is needed in this. So thank you very much for everyone's participation. It's actually been a great day.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't thank everyone enough. It's really been a terrific day of talks and information. So, I think you should all feel pretty happy with how it worked out. Okay, anything else? Long, tiring day. All right. I'm going to sign off, everybody. And
right,
we'll
take
see
care.
you in a few days. All right, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Hey.